On this week's 51%, we swap New Year's resolutions. Dietitian and personal trainer Nicole Rodriguez teaches us how to set realistic nutrition goals that fit your lifestyle. And in this season of gym memberships, career scheming, and personal development, the New York Times' Jancy Dunn shares what we can learn from the world's longest-running study on human happiness.
If you can make one choice, the choice should be to cultivate warm relationships.
I'm Jessie King. It's all up next on 51%.
I was standing around like one of those girls I had seen in a movie. The whole world was a movie back then. I had my sunglasses on, I wanted to be seen without seeing shy Lolita. I wasn't really in it, I didn't really get it.
You're listening to 51%, a WAMC production dedicated to women's issues and experiences. I'm Jessie King. Thanks for joining us. And Happy New Year. Today we're talking New Year's resolutions, those bright-eyed, full of hope goals we make to set our intentions for the rest of the year. Personally, my goal for 2023 is just to take better care of myself, to catch up on the doctor's appointments I've been putting off, focus on my mental health, get active, and in general start eating and living healthier. That last one doesn't include any weight loss plans on my end, but for a lot of people it does. Overall, exercise and healthy eating are some of the most common resolutions out there. They're at the top of the list year after year because, well, according to a study published in the Journal of Clinical Psychology, more than half of New Year's resolutions fail anyway. But today we're bringing some tips for these popular resolutions to give you a leg up on 2023. Nicole Rodriguez is a registered dietitian and personal trainer based in New York. To be clear, her philosophy is that there is no such thing as good and bad foods. There are foods you should eat more for your health, of course, and others best left as occasional treats. But ultimately, she says food is meant to be enjoyed, and completely cutting out a food you love for the sake of a new diet usually does more to impede your goals than help them. She says the key to setting nutrition goals and living healthier is to know where you're at and slowly incorporate little changes into your life.
The first thing I ask everyone is to first dig into what is your why? What is your motivation for X New Year's resolution or really any goal? So a lot of times we might say, my goal is weight loss. Okay, but is the goal really weight loss? If we dig into our why, maybe our why is that we want to feel better when we're being active with our children. Maybe we want to struggle less when we're carrying groceries. Maybe there's something we want to fit into a little bit better. So when we start digging into some of these whys and we can break them down into something that will resonate past just seeing a number on the scale, we can then assign different habits towards those goals that make a lot of more sense and are more meaningful to us. So I think part one is knowing what your why is. Part two, and I'm sure many of you have heard this before, let's make sure we're setting goals that are smart, that they're attainable, that they're time constrained, that they're realistic. So for example, if your goal, you say, oh, well, I want to lose 50 pounds. There's really there's no great marker in that where you can indicate your progress. It's just like, okay, well, how are we going to get there? So instead of saying, I want to lose 50 pounds, let's look at different habits that can help you reach that goal step by step. So you might say, my goal is to increase my vegetable consumption for the month of January, which is going to help you add volume to your meals for very few calories, which is a strong habit of people who are able to lose and then maintain our weight, right? Another one, instead of saying, well, I'm going to make it to the gym 3 times a week this year. Well, if you're starting from not going to the gym at all, a more realistic habit, again, that would be aligned with a weight loss goal as well, would be, I'm going to commit to 10 minutes at home once a week for the next 4 weeks, and then build on that. So when we think small steps as well, we're more likely to be less discouraged and to start building on those habits instead of abandoning them.
When it comes to nutrition goals to eat healthier, what does basic healthy eating look like? Because if I Google recommendations right now, I'm going to be bombarded with blogs and different diet ideas.
There's so much noise out there. And unfortunately, what is sustainable is not always the sexiest sounding things. That's why we gravitate towards things that are all about eliminations from your diet. Whereas a really good rule of thumb for most of us, being that 90% of the American population does not meet this goal, is like, hey, why don't we talk about additions? And specifically, why don't we talk about ways we can add more produce in ways that work for us? So yes, it's true. That is one of the huge pillars of the quote unquote healthier diet, is that we do have this focus on produce, and that can really be in any form. So again, I think we hear, oh, we should eat more vegetables, and people will tend to gravitate towards ideas like, I need to start juicing, right? Or I need to, okay, so this means I need to go vegan or do the cabbage diet. It doesn't mean any of those things. So taking it back, Jesse, why don't you tell me about like what your usual breakfast or lunch is, if you're comfortable sharing?
Oh, yeah. I mean, one of my goals this year is really to eat better, and I guess at a more regular time each day. Right now, I kind of just let my day dictate a lot of my eating habits. If I'm running late or really busy in the morning, sometimes I only have like a granola bar, or I just skip breakfast altogether and wait for lunch. And then at lunch, I just tend to grab whatever is around me. So, but in the morning when I do eat breakfast, lately it's usually like a bowl of cereal, or I've really been liking smoothie bowls lately. I pick up those a lot on the way to work.
I love that. And again, talking about like, so your goal is I want to eat more habitually and I want to eat more healthful. So for me to say, well, here's a bunch of recipes, see what you like that might not be helpful. But something really specific that might work for someone like you is I know you're having cereal and milk, which, by the way, a very nutrient dense combination of foods. I also know that cereal and milk together is the number one driver of produce consumption. So I would say, hey, you know what? Why don't we try this week, Jesse? Would you be open to adding a banana to that cereal? Or would you be open to adding blueberries to that cereal? And now we're starting to take an existing habit and building a more nutrient dense habit into it.
So how can you eat healthier on a budget? Because groceries are super expensive right now.
It's insane right now. So I would definitely encourage you to give yourself permission to enjoy produce in all forms. And something that really gets overlooked is that frozen section. Of course, there's benefits to fresh, there's benefits to frozen, there's benefits to canned. So in the frozen section, I know that almost all of that produce, whether we're talking fruits or vegetables, that is picked at its peak ripeness, flash frozen to retain nutrient quality, and then it goes to your grocer. So frozen by the pound, when we're looking at price per pound, there are often many savings to be had in that aisle. So I would definitely say, like, for example, if you want to make your own smoothie bowl, it sounds like you like smoothie bowls. I might say, like, hey, Jesse, let's grab a big bag of, or whatever you have room for in your refrigerator, in your freezer. Let's grab a bag of mixed frozen berries. I know that you can blend that together with yogurt. Maybe you want to top it with some peanut butter, and store brand is fine, right? And then that would be one way for you to probably save some money. Secondarily, we look at the canned section. There are some cases, for example, tomatoes and peaches, where the canning process actually helps to enhance nutrient density. So really, like, again, giving yourself that permission to shop the center of the aisle, even for produce, can be a real great money-saving hack.
When it comes to exercise, do you have any advice on how to keep progressing towards your goals? I know we mentioned setting small, realistic goals and working our way up to the larger stuff, but how can you keep your interest, I guess?
So the thing about, I think what we're really talking about is motivation, and motivation can kind of wax and wane. We can't really depend on motivation, but we have to build up enough momentum so that we keep that ball rolling. Now, how do we build momentum when we're trying to do a new exercise program? One is to look at our actual and perceived barriers to sticking with whatever your program may be. So the more we can make it habitual, the better. For example, if you say, I'm going to commit to getting up and getting this done first thing in the AM. A couple of barriers might be like, oh, but this means I sacrifice sleep, or I struggle with getting myself ready in the morning. If we plan that the night before you're going to bed 10 minutes earlier, we're removing a barrier. If we make sure our clothes are laid out, then we have a mental cue. It's removing a barrier, but it's also reinforcing what you're doing, right? If you're at home and you know that you're going to wake up and see that yoga mat with maybe a couple of weights and bands laid out and ready for you from the night before, you're not going to feel so great about ignoring those visual cues. And you will probably, you put on your clothes and get to stepping with your workout. So motivation can wax and wane, but when we have enough momentum to build things to where they're habitual, then exercising will eventually become as second nature as brushing your teeth.
Are there any easy activities you like to suggest for those who don't usually or currently work out?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm huge on walking. That's my number. If you're not doing it and you're looking for one thing to do more of, I am always going to say, if you are bodily able, that I will say go out and walk more, because then we can look at your day and we can say like, oh, well, Jesse, between this interview and the next one, it seems like you have 15 minutes and you don't have to be editing or doing anything else. So now I would look and say, how are you spending that 15 minutes? Are you scrolling through social media? Are you just kind of hanging out by the water cooler in the office? And if I know you can take 10 of those 15 minutes, I might say like, hey, walk around the block of your office a couple of times. And then we have that again, like we have something built into your day. It's all about finding little pockets of time and little, what I call loops, like actual places where you might be able to walk more. I'm sure you've heard some of the recommended tips of you park a little farther away at the mall or the grocery store. You take the stairs instead of the elevator. Maybe you're taking an extra loop around the grocery store and see what nutritious offerings are available to you. So looking for those little pockets for more walking just overall will increase your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, your NEAT, and that's going to have a nice little snowball effect when you keep building more and more steps into your day.
So this next question, I try to be mindful of the fact that I'm a late 20-something trying to make a show for a broader audience. So the tips and situations that might apply to me might not be the best advice for those at other stages in their life. For older women, are there certain exercises or dietary needs that they should be focused on?
I can't emphasize enough the importance throughout the life cycle for women, because we tend to kind of get put on the back burner in this conversation. But strength training throughout your life cycle is not only going to help you build and preserve muscle, but it's also great for bone density. And we know that as we age, that becomes an issue for many of us. So, and strength training can be with your body weight, it can be with actual weights, and can be with bands. But anytime when you're creating resistance, that really is important 2 to 3 times a week if you're able to. Secondarily, making sure you're taking in adequate lean protein, not just at one meal, but throughout the course of the day. Unfortunately, Americans tend to have an eating pattern that favors protein at nighttime at our last meal, but at breakfast and lunch, we tend to sort of lag behind and rely more on carbohydrates. So looking at how your protein is spread. Last but not least, this really goes for everybody. Like, where are we at with fiber? Are we getting adequate fiber so that we can stay regular, so that we can help regulate blood sugar, so that we can maintain weight, have good cholesterol levels? So those are just a couple of things that I like to call low-hanging fruit, right? Like, you can probably incorporate those 2 things and have it be beneficial, not only someone your age, and also my age, and 10, 20 years down the line also.
Well, Nicole, thanks so much for taking the time to speak with me. Lastly, I was just kind of hoping to get your thoughts on resolutions as a whole. What do you make of this time of year and the different diets being thrown out there?
What I tell my own clients is to go out and almost put armor on. So you're shielded from all of the diet culture talk and from all of the fads and from all of the quick fixes, because really it's about creating sustainable patterns that work for you. And I like to say, like, your grocery cart, your plate, the food that goes into your mouth, that is your business, nobody else's. And I would resist the urge to pay too much attention to other people's resolutions and also what other people are trying to sell you this time of year, because it is that time where the culture just kind of comes in like a bunch of vultures, because the diet industry knows you're vulnerable right now.
Nicole Rodriguez is a registered dietitian and personal trainer working with clients one-on-one in New York. You can learn more about her work and her podcast, which focuses on the ways that food is grown and the way that it gets to your door. That's called Food Bullying. You can learn more at her website, enjoyfoodenjoylife.com. Nicole, thanks again.
It's my pleasure. Thank you and Happy New Year, Jessie.
In this season of gym memberships, career planning, hobby finding, and personal development, I think it's important to remember to not put so much pressure on ourselves and to not lose sight of what the goal really is here, which I think for most people is just to be happy and enjoy life. If it's any comfort, our next guest says the key to that is already around us. Jancy Dunn is a veteran health and lifestyle journalist who has written for several publications, including the Wall Street Journal, Vogue, O, and more. Now she's with the New York Times Well Desk, which for the new year has built a 7-day happiness challenge based on the good life, an upcoming book by Drs. Robert Waldinger and Mark Scholes detailing the world's longest-running scientific study of human happiness. The more than 80-year study, started by researchers at Harvard in 1938, tracked the lives and health of 700-plus individuals across economic and social classes. It's now expanded to multiple generations, all in the hope of determining what makes a truly happy and fulfilling life. Participants were asked detailed questions at different points in their lives, submitted health records, brain scans, and more. Dunn says it all came down to one clear finding.
What they found is that if you can make one choice, a single decision that could ensure your health and happiness, the choice should be to cultivate warm relationships, all kinds of relationships. The authors say that you should pay attention to what they coined social fitness, which is a phrase I've never heard before. And they say that for you to be in good health, you should pay just as much attention to the health of your relationships as everything else. And it really made me rethink the way that I approach my health.
Yeah, like what exactly makes someone socially fit? What does that look like?
Bob Waldinger, he's the Harvard psychiatrist that is the fourth director of this study. And he wrote the book that this happiness challenge is based on. It's called The Good Life. And he was saying that, you have all these relationships and that friendships in particular are the most easy to neglect. And there's this terrible exercise in the book that he proposed, which is think about somebody that is really close to you that you love, that you have access to, and then count up how many hours you saw them last year. And I thought about my friend, my very best friend, Julie, who lives near me. And I saw her maybe 3 times for 2 hours. And that's 6 hours. And that's probably what I spent on Instagram this weekend. Let's face it. And I just thought, wow, when you really tally it up like that, it's not that many hours. Multiply it by 10, it's 60 hours in a decade to spend with someone that I love so much. So, his assertion and the other researchers is that when you have people that you love, you can cancel a million times. You can put off seeing them. You can assume that they will always be there. Send them a quick text and you think you've covered your bases in terms of your social fitness. And that just isn't true, that relationships need to be nurtured, tended to, maintained, and that it's really important to form new relationships as well. So it's everything from, you don't have to have a partner, and that certainly doesn't guarantee happiness, but it can be your partner, your kids, your parents, your friends, your acquaintances, your work friends, which is very important. There's a Pew Research survey that if you have a best friend at work, you're so much more engaged. You tend to stay longer at that job. You're psychologically better off. And it's even what are called weak ties, which are the ties with people that maybe they're people in your neighborhood, you recognize their faces, but you don't know their names, or strangers. It can just be the people around you. And when you have kind of a nice interaction with someone like that, like, the cashier at your supermarket, you kind of walk away with a warm feeling. Well, that feeling is real, and it does make you feel connected and a sense of belonging. So it's all kinds of relationships. It's really comprehensive.
That's good to hear that there's like a variety of relationships and interactions that can contribute. I was going to ask, what does this mean for us introverts? Is there a certain number of relationships that can be considered like a sweet spot, or is this more tailored to each person's experience?
Well, do you kind of identify as an introvert? Because I do as well.
I do.
Yes. And it's hard for us introverts, isn't it? You wouldn't know that I'm an introvert because I present as an extrovert because I interview people all day long. I'm a health journalist. But inside, I'm often screaming. So I asked that very thing of Dr. Waldinger. I said, number one, is there sort of a set amount of people that you should have an ideal number of friends? Because there's, sometimes there are studies about things like that. And he said, no, it's more about the quality of your relationships versus the quantity. And for introverts, they still need social interaction. It just presents in different ways. For this challenge, I talked to Susan Cain, who's just probably the most famous person in terms of writing about introverts, who wrote the book Quiet. And she said that you just have to approach social groups differently, that you don't have to look for friends. If you have a certain interest, follow the interest and the friends will come. That introverts like controlled situations. Don't you? I don't like giant parties where things are out of control. I like small groups where I can interact one-on-one with people. And she said, if you can find small groups, things like bird watching, where you're in nature and you're just with a few people. So no, it is not just for extroverts. And we have one challenge about making yourself talk to strangers. And I've been interacting with a lot of our readers, and it's been very difficult. But then they say, okay, I did it. I talked to a receptionist today, and I know how hard it is, but also the benefits if you're able to do that, because then the world is a friendlier place. Even in my neighborhood, it's funny. I moved to a new neighborhood a few years ago, and there's this woman who passes me every day. I know her face, but I don't talk to her. And her dachshund barks at me every day. And I thought, okay, I'm going to make myself talk to her. And it is difficult. You might get rejected if you strike up a conversation with somebody you don't know. I tell myself they're not rejecting me. They don't know me. They're just edging away because maybe they think I'm trying to sell them something, or I'm going to pull out a brochure. I get it. But anyway, I went over to her and I said, you know what? I feel like your dog doesn't like me, and I'm wondering if there's anything I can do to make friends with your dog. And she said, oh, Petey doesn't like when people wear hats. And I said, excuse me? The dachshund gets tense when people walk by with hats and he barks. And she said, winter is a very tough time for Petey. As you can imagine, I said, yes, of course. And she said, I don't want to tell everyone I pass, so that's why I didn't say anything to you. Well, suddenly my neighborhood was friendlier. I fell in love with Petey. I understood where the woman was coming from. And now when I see Petey trundling along, I quickly pull off my hat if I happen to be wearing one, because I know that Petey will get neurotic about it. And that would not have happened had I not talked to somebody. Most of us aren't in high school anymore when you have this huge pool of people from which to choose. It does involve some effort, and it can be painful when people reject you, but the rewards can be really outsized.
That's true. I feel like as you become an adult, it can be difficult to both maintain the connections that you have and make new ones too. What are some of the other exercises in the 7-day challenge?
there's so many different ways to make connections. And one of the ways that we had was something that I just started doing with my friends. I have friends who are really busy. They have families and jobs and all kinds of things. And I kept trying. I love hearing someone's voice. I know not everybody likes to talk on the phone. I happen to. And so I would say to some of my friends, can you give me 8 minutes? It's not 5, which is too quick. It's not 10, which can stretch to 15, 20, 30. We don't want that. Give me 8 minutes and a hard out. And there's research that there's this disconnect between when people want to hang up. There was one where only 2% of people on these phone calls that these researchers tracked were in sync in terms of when they wanted to hang up. Some stretched on for too long and kept saying, a conversational cue is, so anyway, that means, I need to leave. Or they're the person that just wanted to get off and couldn't. I've been at both ends of that. And so when you have a hard out, as nutty as it sounds, it actually helps because then you focus. You get down to business. I remember I called my friend Tina. I said, let's try the 8 minutes. We rolled through a number of subjects. And when you're good friends with somebody, you can do this. We talked about our mother's health. She wanted to know what I thought about, is there an afterlife? It was both quickie things and deep subjects. And we got it all done in 8 minutes. And so I thought, I wonder if anybody else would kind of respond to this. So we put that in and it's got a great response. We have another exercise about thinking of someone that has done something that maybe changed your life and they don't know. I have a friend who had a rough time growing up and he basically lived at his friend's house. He would show up for dinner every night for years. And, his friend's mom just brought him into the fold and fed him dinner. I said, write her a letter and tell her how much that meant to you, that she gave you a stable home life at a time when you didn't have one. I wrote one to my 4th grade teacher, Mrs. Manley. I was looking at a report card and she said on the report card, oh, Jancy has a talent for writing. I wouldn't be surprised if she became a writer one day. Well, I didn't even know you could be a writer. I was flabbergasted and it changed the course of my life. I saw what was possible. And, what had happened was my mom had handed me a box of crap. When your parents get older, they start cleaning out the house and then they hand you your box of memorabilia. And that's where it was. So I thought, I'm going to see if Mrs. Manley's still with us. I'm a reporter. I tracked her down in 2 seconds and I sent her, and this is something quieter than an introvert could do. I sent her a letter and I thought, I'm so very aware of introverts in general and just people that may not want to engage. Just because you track someone down, they may not want to get back to you. I get it. Some people don't want to be found if you're reconnecting with an old friend, and they could have a million reasons that have nothing to do with you. So I sent her snail mail and I thought, if she wants to get back to me, she can. She got back to me in 2 days. We talk all the time. We write all the time. I called her on New Year's Day. I sent her flowers on her 90th birthday, and she's become a grandmother figure for me. Both my grandmothers are long gone, and that would not have happened had I not sent her a note. You have to take a little bit of an emotional risk.
Hello.
Hello.
I just had to download Zoom.
I'm so sorry. I decided to give the challenge a try myself and called up my best friend since the 4th grade, Shania. Whenever I do stuff like this, she thinks I'm crazy, but I will say we got everything covered in close to 8 minutes. Jancy Dunn is a longtime health and lifestyle journalist, now a columnist with the New York Times Well desk. Day by day, Well is releasing tips and exercises to nurture your relationships as part of its 7-day happiness challenge. The challenge itself is based on The Good Life by Doctors Robert Waldinger and Mark Scholes, which comes out January 10th. You can learn more by signing up for the Well newsletter or at nytimes.com.
What's your New Year's resolution?
Kind of the same thing that it was last year, just like trying new things, whether it be going somewhere new, doing something new, or eating something new.
Solid. It's a good one.
Trying to go with the flow more.
We're We're going to switch gears before we go. Fun fact, my very first episode for this program focused on the swearing in of New York Governor Kathy Hochul about a year and a half ago. Hochul, a Democrat, became the state's first female governor following the resignation of Andrew Cuomo, who stepped down amid a number of scandals. In November, she won a full 4-year term and became the state's first woman elected to the position by overcoming a challenge from Republican Congressman Lee Zeldin. She took the oath of office on January 1st from NAACP President Hazel Dukes.
I, Kathy Hochul,
do solemnly swear
that
I will support
The day included performances by a gospel choir, 8-year-old Harlem poet Caden Hearn, and a video statement from young women reflecting on the impact of Hochul's inauguration, which a little closer to home included some students from the Capital Region. Our associate producer Jody Cowan has more.
Introducing the ceremony, a video titled The First showcased several young women from across the state reading excerpts from essays about what Hochul's inauguration means to them.
Governor Hochul gives me hope that maybe one day I could be there standing at the podium.
I am thankful to Governor Hochul for taking that step and setting the stage for all that is to come for women.
Thank you, Governor Hochul, for being the first and making sure you're not the last.
Together we're building a brighter future in New York.
Featured in the video were a number of students from Shaker High School in the North Colony Central School District. Deputy Superintendent Kathleen Skeels says the opportunity to participate originated from working with New York-based group First Amendment, First Vote.
I met with the founder, Lolita, and the goal is to help young women understand that they can have a seat at the table and help them to understand how the political process works, how they can get engaged in working, whether they're the candidate themselves or working on a campaign or being a fundraiser, and just understanding the various levels of service. Because of the work of Melina, the founder, when we had our first seminar, she was able to invite Commissioner Moy from the governor's office. So Commissioner Moy came and she was so impressed that she was able to get the invitation for us to bring some girls to create a video for the governor's inauguration.
Skeels says 6 Shaker High students were chosen to visit the state capitol, scripts in hand, to record themselves for the tribute. Krithi Paula, a 10th grader, says she feels a strong sense of pride for her involvement.
I talked about how in the past we've always had women fighting for our rights, like Elizabeth Cady Stanton or like Sojourner Truth, and all those women fought every single day to have rights, and how now that we actually have more representation, it's like they fought for a good reason. And as a young woman and a person of color, I feel like we don't get represented, and having a female governor was really important to me because, you know, it is possible and other women can do the same. Also, like, the first is always kind of like the hardest, but that means that there's like a lot of more people who can come after that and take her like an example.
Paula highlighted part of Hochul's inaugural address in which she stated, quote, "I'm not here to make history, I'm here to make a difference," unquote, is one of her main takeaways from the event.
It means a lot because it's saying that her being a woman isn't what makes her so great. It's that as a woman, she's making all these changes. And as a woman, she's showing that, you know, women like can do the same things as men, and they can make impactful decisions, and they can lead a country. And I feel like it's so important to have that example that she's a woman and she will make a difference as a woman.
First Amendment, First Vote is a nonpartisan seminar and conference organization for high school teens who identify as girls, with a goal of increasing gender parity in American politics by building a pipeline for young women ready to run for office at all levels. Based in central New York, they currently work within 10 regions of the state, engaging about 150 girls in conversations around political science and leadership development. Paula says having the program in her school has helped her think about her own leadership and career goals.
I want to meet people who are in government positions, or meet people and know their experiences, and maybe how that can help me for the future, and like decide where I want to go. And I think this program will really help me do that, like see what are the opportunities that I could have.
Deputy Superintendent Skeels says she hopes to get other regional schools involved in the program by continuing to work with the Capital District BOCES team.
I've been sharing with the leadership of that team everything that's happened for our students since we joined. And so at a regional meeting, I will be now sharing it with the other districts, because the goal is when they went to the local seminar, it was all our girls because we're the only district. But next fall, when we go to the local seminar again, we hope it'll be 30 girls, 5 from Shaker High School, but 25 others from 5 other districts, because the goal is for them to find community, not just within the school, but across school, so that they can learn how to network and be a community. Our girls already are. They were incredibly impressive, but for them to meet people who are doing the same work in other schools, I think will be outstanding.
Reporting from Latham, I'm Jody Cowan for 51%.
Thanks for listening to this week's 51%. 51% is a national production of WAMC Northeast Public Radio in Albany, New York. It's produced and hosted by me, Jesse King. Our associate producer is Jody Cowan. Our executive producer is Dr. Alan Chartock. And our theme is Lolita by the Albany-based artist Girl Blue. Thanks again to Nicole Rodriguez and Jancy Dunn for joining us this week. To learn more about our guests and the show, check us out at WAMCpodcast.org. There we have episodes new and old and links to everything you need to know. We'll be back same time, same place next week. Until then, again, Happy New Year. I'm Jesse King for 51%.
I was every single girl, I was nobody else, I was so sure of myself. I was 15 and a half, he was a hollow laugh. And I lost my cool somewhere along the way. The nightmare down the hallway, I had to learn how to look away. I lost my cool, no electricity, hot rain on the concrete, sweet